Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome back. I love to see the interaction, the hugs, the handshakes, the greetings. So we're going to get started, inshallah. Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. We start by praising Allah and we seek peace and blessings on our Prophet Muhammad. This is our 12th week, believe it or not. Alhamdulillah, we've had very good feedback, good response. End of the summer, a lot of people have sent their regrets for not being able to come. So if you see the crowd thinning a bit, it's because people are trying to fit in those last minute vacations. So I am going back to what's available on the website. I send everyone back to the website in terms of our vision, our mission, our values. And I want to touch base on some of our values here at MWN. Comprehensiveness. Islam holistically covers all aspects of one's life. So we're not just Muslim while we're here, we're Muslim when we walk out the door, we're Muslim when we're with our families. And inshallah, everything that's being basically sent, delivered through the center is reinforcing these values. Balanced perspective. Islamic positions ought to be free from theology, sectarian, or political agendas. So there's nobody directing us from a certain ideology here. It's really free-flowing. It's with Sheikh Adnan's experience and religious background and study, but he doesn't follow a certain, you can say, philosophy on Islam or an ideology or a manhaj that someone gave him. It's open book, and he's studying, and he's giving us a fresh view on things. Service orientation, that's part of our mission as well. So we want to show and demonstrate that service is an integral part of Islam, and historically Muslims have been dedicated to the well-being of the communities within which they existed. If you remember Surah Al-Kahf, the story of those potentially 3 people, maybe up to 7, who knows how many, but very few people changed the whole society, and that was a big lesson for us. And maybe we can do the same, inshallah. Cooperation, inclusive cooperation with all members of society is essential to the wellness of the community. So obviously there's a lot of coordination with other centers, other Islamic organizations within London, but even we have partnerships and we sponsor and we help and we promote a lot of different events and programs in London, and we refer outside as well. Social responsibility, that's part of what we were talking about in the last few weeks with stewardship and service. Supporting social and ethical issues, including social justice, both locally and abroad, is fundamental. There was an event today, I believe at the London Muslim Mosque. Did anyone attend it? For the Uyghurs? There's an MP that came to visit to support the Uyghurs from China. There's a lot of Chinese Muslims that are leaving due to persecution there. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend. I'd love to attend all those social justice events or issues. Very important for us. So keep that in the back of your mind. So where are we? What are we doing here? We've basically went over 3 main concepts. Iqra, hopefully your understanding of that concept has grown and expanded. Activism versus indifference. And last couple weeks we've been talking about stewardship and service. There's a few more to go, about 5 or 6 topics to go. And hopefully once we're done those things, we'll basically assess or see where people are. And hopefully if you've bought in and you understand these concepts, you can basically become a mentor or take this out to someone else. That's the objective here. A lot of people are asking, like, how do I give back? Well, we need to make sure we're all on the same page, that we have a collective narrative, understanding, positions on certain things, and inshallah with time that's going to come. So patience with us, and it'll come. Brother Khalid has been looking at optimizing, self-development, mashallah, and that's ongoing. That can go forever because you can always, to the last day you live, you can always optimize something in your life, bring something better. So that's where we are, that's where we're going. Inshallah, hopefully you're benefiting. I know I am, alhamdulillah, every time I attend. And yeah, that's where we are. And I will give it over to Sheikh Adnan. Jazakallah khairan.
So go to the mentee. So take out your phone for a moment and see if we can do a quick, just one. We'll just do one, then we'll go to the actual topic today. It's the fourth topic today. So I've done 3. I have another 5. These are the core topics, the building bricks, in my opinion, of what you need to know, whether you are going to be a mentor or not. Just being a Muslim, I think, in the modern age, you should have these 8 topics clear to you because they're commonly misunderstood. So this is, see if you can just go to, if you go to mentee.com, by now you should know how to do that. And then there's the code, 66279206. 66279206. And it's a question. What is the most common use for the word jihad? What have you grown up hearing? Is it visible? You can see it? Okay, good. At the back there, you can see what's up there? Good. All right. We'll share more of the slides, inshallah, as we move along, like the slides that have already been, like the slides of the presentations or the lectures that have already been given. Share them with you. Inshallah, you guys can go through them and listen to stuff if you haven't listened to the full lectures in detail. It's important. These 8 topics that I'm going to go through, they'll take a little bit of time, but they're key. They're carefully chosen. I spent a lot of time kind of just threading out what needs to be said and what doesn't, what needs to be understood and what can be kind of left for later. As you can see, I'm not here teaching you how to practice certain rituals, or it's really, this is more just conceptual, understanding what it is you stand for and what Islam is. Okay, very good. I think there's 31 people probably, and still more. It's good. This is actually better than what I got maybe 6-7 years ago. I did something similar. It wasn't on Mentee. It was on different. It was in a different type of survey, where the majority of people answered that one over there. So it was much more. Well, not diversity, but there's been a shift, I guess, to something different. You can go to the slides. Jazakumullah khair. All right. So the 4th topic. I think you probably picked up what is going to be, and I call it the state of jihad. Don't worry. Before your spines shiver, I can almost hear things. You'll be fine. Nothing's going to happen today. It's out of the norm. It's just important to understand certain aspects of our deen, and this is one of them. This is one of them, and I'll have some surveys at the end for you guys to contribute with me. So what does the word mean? And jihad, the word jihad, what does the word actually mean? It comes from the root of jim, ha, dal, juhud, and that means effort. That's what it actually means. Jahada means someone who exerted effort against something that is trying to make it more difficult for them to do so. That's what the word actually means. So jihad is the state of striving against any form of difficulty, whether it's another human being or whether it's something different. It doesn't matter. Whatever is causing you difficulty and the fact that you're striving against it, that's what the word means linguistically. That's what the word means Islamically. We'll explain more. It's 41 times in the Quran. It's a pretty good number. I mean, if you were to take certain phrases and the number of times they're repeated in the Quran, you would end up with a priority list. And I've done this before. It's actually a lecture that I give when I do Quranic sciences. And we go through, like, there are you just take words and you can calculate how many times they were talked about in the Quran, and you'll end up with maybe around 30 words that basically are in the Quran in the double digits. And jihad is up there. It's one of those topics talked about a fair number of times. So it is important and to understand where it comes from a linguistic perspective. The reason I'm talking about this topic is because this is one of the words that we have been taught to shy away from. Like, we're not supposed to talk. We don't like talking about it. We feel very uncomfortable if someone brings it up. We don't call our children jihad anymore. It's one of those names that completely got removed from the public eye and public choice. The word is kind of left out. We don't like using it. We prefer the shuyukh not to talk about it a lot, and if they use it, to try to use some other word. And I find that to be extremely problematic. Extremely problematic, because the word is very important. You can't shy away from a word that is very central to what Islam actually is, which is why it's important that you understand it appropriately, and you understand exactly what it means, and without any form of confusion or loss. So it's 41 times in the Quran, pretty high frequency of numbers, and it comes from just effort, striving, putting effort towards achieving something against a difficulty. There has to be something that's making things difficult for you in order for it to be actually jihad. It's exert effort, really what it means. So he says, subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Hajj, وَجَاهِدُوا فِي اللَّهِ حَقَّ جِهَادِهِ. So it's not only about the frequency of times the frequency that the word came in the Quran through. No, it's also about the way it was talked about in the Quran. So understand there's difference here. Sometimes things are talked about in a light way in the Quran, and they can talk about a lot of times because it's such a light approach. But then other words are extremely heavy. I mean, the wording, the linguistic wording, the usage of the word is very decisive and very clear. And وَجَاهِدُوا فِي اللَّهِ حَقَّ جِهَادِهِ in Al-Hajj means, and then strive and exert your effort to the amount that Allah deserves for you to exert your effort for Him, which is this is a huge responsibility. It's a huge weight for you to carry. For me to say, do something to the degree that Allah deserves for you to do it for Him. How do you even define that? How do I define something? This is enough. This is as much as Allah deserves. It's possible. That's an impossible. You cannot define that. It's impossible to define. So it's actually asking you to do it all the time. That's why the name of this, and it's funny because how culture changed. When I first gave this, when I put the word state, people would get very, very uncomfortable because they would, it's a pun. It's a play on words, right? The word state, what does it mean? Either country or just the state that you're in, right? So a lot of people would understand it's not country, it's a state as in your state. You have to be in a continuous state of jihad. This is the meaning of the word. This word, as a Muslim, it defines the state that you are always in. You're always in a state of striving against something. You're striving towards achieving something against a difficulty that is sometimes defined and sometimes not defined. And Hassan al-Basri, by the way, said, إِنَّ الرَّجُلَ لَيُجَاهِدُ فِي اللَّهِ حَقَّ جِهَادِهِ وَمَا ضَرَبَ بِسَيْفٍ. Just as like a teaser. Hassan al-Basri would say, indeed, a person is capable of striving for the sake of Allah, to the degree that Allah deserves to be strived for and never even picked up a sword. This is Hassan al-Basri, one of the known tabi'een. In Surah Al-Nisa, he says, subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَفَضَّلَ اللَّهُ الْمُجَاهِدِينَ عَلَى الْقَاعِدِينَ أَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prefers and offers advantages and reward advances for those who perform jihad mujahideen. عَلَى الْقَاعِدِينَ. Remember we talked about this. I talked about activism and indifference. And I told you, qa'ideen, al-qa'ada fil Quran doesn't mean to sit. It means to sit back and not do what you're supposed to do. So here's a good example of it. Al-qa'ideen, not those who are sitting down. Those who sat back, who didn't do their job, didn't strive. Ajran azim, but there's a huge difference in terms of what they're going to be rewarded with yawm al-qiyamah. For the majority of this lecture, I'm going to be sharing a lot of a hadith and ayah, just so you understand the importance of this one topic, so that you are convinced that it's important at least to take a moment to understand it appropriately, so it makes sense to you. He says, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, hadith in the collection of Muslim, رَأْسُ الْأَمْرِ الْإِسْلام, the head of this matter is submission. وَعَمُودُهُ الصَّلَاةِ, and the pillar is performing your salah. وَذِرْوَةُ سِنَامِهِ الْجِهَادِ, meaning the pinnacle of it, the highest level of all of it, is the state of striving or jihad. This is a big deal. You can see that the word is used a lot, and it's used very, very importantly, very significantly. It's given high status. So again, there's just more reason for you to really comprehend what this word is supposed to mean for you. Now here's the first time the Quran used this word. And you may know where I'm going with this, you may not, but that's okay. So in Surah Al-Ankabut, right? Surah Al-Ankabut, at the beginning of it, he says, subhanahu wa ta'ala, maybe the ayah number 5 or 6, وَمَنْ جَاهَدَ فَإِنَّمَا يُجَاهِدُ لِنَفْسِهِ. And those who strive are striving for themselves. Meaning those who are actually striving against difficulties, those who are exerting effort, they're doing it, it's benefiting them. فَإِنَّمَا يُجَاهِدُ لِنَفْسِهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَغَنِيٌّ عَنِ الْعَالَمِينَ. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need of anything that you are doing. He is not in need of anyone or anything. So whatever you're striving or you're doing jihad, you're doing it for you. You're not doing it for him. Literally, you're not actually benefiting him. You're benefiting yourself. So that's the first time this word was ever used in the Quran. Not sequentially in terms of opening the Quran, no, but in terms of revelation. In terms of the Prophet ﷺ being given the Quran in the sequence of revelation, the first time that the word actually popped up in the Quran, the first time he would recite it, ﷺ, and the Sahaba would hear it, would be in Surah Al-Ankabut here. And at the end of the surah, وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَمَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. And those who strive in our name or for our sake, meaning for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. Indeed, we will guide them to our path. وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَمَعَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with those who show excellence. So why is this important? Does anyone know why this is important? Why is it important that it was in... What type of surah is Ankabut? It's a Makki surah, right? It's a Makki surah. What do we know about the Makki period? So another Makki surah, Al-Furqan. He says, subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَلَا تُطِعِ الْكَافِرِينَ. Don't walk the same path that the disbelievers walk. وَجَاهِدُهُمْ بِهِ. And strive with the Quran against them. Jihad and kabir. Use the Quran to strive against them. Bihi here is returning on bihi with the Quran, or by using the Quran. You have to just go back to the verses and read the context. So why is this important? Because combat was only made permissible later. So the word jihad, you cannot, the problem with it, and you all know this, I'm just kind of x-raying your faces as I talk about this and enjoying the lack of comfort amongst all of you. This word was used before the concept of carrying a sword and fighting was even permissible. The first time this word was used, you weren't allowed to use it in a form where there was combat involved. You weren't, like the word existed, and you could not use it in a form of any form of combat or war, or fighting, physically or any form. Why? Because combat was not permissible. It was haram. For the whole 13 years in Mecca, the Sahaba weren't allowed to fight back. And this is something a lot of people don't know or don't fully appreciate. Like they were oppressed in Mecca and they weren't allowed to fight back. They were told, meaning the wording of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the Prophet ﷺ was, you're not to fight back. You get oppressed, you leave. If you can't put up with it anymore, you leave. And that's why they went to Habasha. And that's why they went to Medina, because they didn't fight back. So the few stories we have where Umar ibn Khattab is taking a couple of swings here and there, it was the day he accepted Islam. He knew nothing yet. It was the day he accepted the deen, so the Prophet ﷺ kind of let it slide for that one day. So the few stories that we have actually don't represent what the Sahaba were told to do, which explains a lot at the time why people were being tortured sometimes and beaten, and it was nothing. No one did anything. And people always ask me, why didn't they do it? Because they weren't allowed to fight back. It had to be diplomatic. It had to be through either buying people out of slavery or some negotiation or some agreement. It was not going to be physical. But how is that possible if this verse here existed during that period? وَمَنْ جَاهَدَ فَإِنَّمَا يُجَاهِدُ. That's it. Because the word is not restricted. You cannot restrict this word to combat. Doing that is one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest mistakes that were made during our lives. It's important for us as Muslims to identify, the reason I do all these talk, the introduction course in general, the reason I do it is because I'm identifying what it is that we as Muslims in this era, when we're living and where we're living, what is it that we struggle with? What aspects of Islamic core concepts have been mutilated and changed and misrepresented and misunderstood and removed from its actual context to the point that it's no longer functional? And that's really my job here, and any Muslim speaker. Their job is to go back and see, what did Islam represent to the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba? What did they learn from it? How did they grow? And then take a look, are we understanding things the same way they did so that we can have the same effect, it can have the same effect on us? And when you find that's not the case, you have to go back and, talk about things. That's why understanding Iqra is extremely important, because again, we listen to it and we walk. No, this was earth-breaking at the time. Understanding the story of Ahl al-Kahf and activism and the problem of being indifferent and being like the people who witnessed the incident of Ashab al-Ukhdud in Surah al-Buruj. The issue of service, of ubudiyah, being rooted in service, not limited to rituals, worship in terms of rituals. It's a problem because that changes things a lot. These aren't small misunderstandings that put us just a little bit outside of, no, this actually removes core concepts that we should understand, that the Prophet ﷺ made sure were clear to everyone. Same thing goes with istikhlaf and stewardship, which we talked about last week. And the concept of your communal obligation, understanding that basically your coordinates is that you're a servant and you're a khalifa. And you need to understand what that means. Because one means that you're selfless and you're serving everyone, and the other one means that you're responsible. How do you put responsibility and service together? That's the key. That's what Islam is about. And if we don't understand that, then what's the point of anything else that we learn, really? Because that's the core concept of the deen. Jihad is another core concept. If you understand how it works, it's a state. You're in a state of constantly striving towards achieving goodness against the difficulties that are being presented to you. That's why these verses existed before the concept of combat was even a thing. 3 times at least in the Quran. These are just examples. There's other times in the Quran where you find he uses the word, but at the time it could not have meant combat. So those who restrict it to combat are actually causing a huge, it's a lie, basically. And it's not fair. How do we have evidence for that? In Surah Al-Hajj, ayah number 22. Ayah number 39. He says, subhanahu wa ta'ala, أُذِنَ لِلَّذِينَ يُقَاتَلُونَ بِأَنَّهُمْ ظُلِمُوا. Meaning those who have been oppressed, have been fought against, physically harmed, are now given the permission to fight back. When was this? This was on the way to Medina. This verse was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ on his way there, in between. It's one of the verses it's hard to say, was this Medina or Mecca? It's impossible for us to say because it was basically, technically neither. Because he's on the way there. If Quran is coming when you're on the way to Medina, do I call this a Medini ayah or do I call it a Mecca ayah? It was right before he entered Medina. Now you can do it. Now you have your own country, you have your own army, now you can defend yourself. Because before that, it was just civil chaos. If you're living inside a society and you're going to go bear arms and start fighting the people who are putting down the laws, you're just going to call it civil war. You can cause a lot of bloodshed. It's never going to end. It's not how it works. You don't like the laws of the land, you leave it or you change the laws. He tried to stay around to change the laws. It couldn't work out, so he left. He built a country, had his own laws there. And then they tried to transgress against his own laws and change them, so he fought back, alayhi salatu wasalam, which is if you want to summarize his story, alayhi salatu wasalam, in 2 sentences, that's pretty much it. They weren't happy the fact that he had different laws, because those laws are much more attractive, made much more sense. The control that was in the hand of few was no longer in the hand of few in his country, alayhi salatu wasalam. People had many more rights, and they had the ability to voice them, and they had opinions, and they existed equally, and people who had different faiths didn't have to fear that they're going to be stripped from everything that they owned. And that doesn't make sense, because whenever you're sitting in a country and you see others are enjoying rights that you don't enjoy, you start causing chaos, and that you start complaining. So for them, even him doing that, alayhi salatu wasalam, and doing it somewhere else was a problem. So combat was only made permissible later. Those verses that exist before, that have the word jihad in them, you can't understand them via combat, because combat wasn't a thing. So how are they going to actually practice these? What, you can tell me that a verse was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, but they're not practical? You can't practice them until a few years later? Of course not. The moment they're given, you're going to practice. That means they understood jihad as well differently, which is why we have to go back and understand it the way they did, how the Prophet ﷺ explained it. So what are the categories of striving? So striving, whether it's striving to achieve your purpose, or it's striving to achieve your ambitions, or it's striving to stay active and continue to be an activist, or it's striving for self-purification. Ibn al-Qayyim talks about 15 different types of jihad. He talks about 15, this is a scholar of the 7th Islamic century. He talks about 14 different types of jihad, the 15th being the jihad where you are forced to carry, and we'll talk about it. I'm not here to say that combat is not a part of this. No. We'll talk about that in detail and explain to you exactly how and when and what, so that you're never ever ashamed of using this word ever again. And you should never back down from this word. And you should never be shamed out of not using it. You should never feel like, it's a word that you wish the person in front of you didn't bring up. No, this is a word that you should be extremely proud of. If you understand how it works, if you understand where it exists in the Quran and what the Quran says about it, and how the Prophet ﷺ himself practiced it, you have nothing to hide. You're not accountable for mistakes that happened historically, whether in far history or near history, by people who chose to take things out of context for political gain. That's never your fault. It should never be. Actually, that's never been the case around the world for any faith or any ideology or any group of people. Why suddenly it became ours? Why suddenly every time a Muslim person does something wrong, we all have to stand up and apologize, but everyone else is just individual mistakes, people who have individual issues and individual background. Why is it that I have to somehow, and I've had these conversations before, why is it that I have to feel apologetic towards somebody who did something somewhere else and claim that's their problem? Islam does not pay for this. You want to know what Islam is? Come and ask the scholars who actually understand it to teach it and explain it for you appropriately. So really, jihad, these are the example of the categories that he talked about, radiallahu anhu. And he talked about 14, striving against oneself, striving against difficulty, striving against ma'asi, striving against ta'at, meaning you strive against whims and desires, you strive against sin, you strive with good deeds. All of this is striving. When you stand up to pray at Fajr and you are barely oriented at that point, that's striving. That's a form of jihad. That's a very important point of jihad. And I'm going to explain. It's a very important form of it. And all the verse, and I'm going to show you the evidence so you don't think this is me just kind of making it up. Purpose, you strive towards being the best steward of earth you can be and the best servant of Allah. When we talked about those concepts, 1, 2, 3, iqra, and stewardship and service and activism, how do you make sure you continue to do them? Understand? Like they're there, now they're clear to you, that's what I have to be. Well, how do you make sure you actually do them? This is what you need. This is the state. This is the state of mind that you have to be in. Jihad is what you need in order for you to continue to do that until the end. It's a mindset. I'm always in a state of striving, identifying that there are difficulties, and I'm striving towards them or against them or despite them. And without that mentality, you'll only identify what you are and you'll just watch it from afar. Yes, I should be Khalifa, I should be Abd. That's what I should be. And that's the end of it. And that's the end of it for most people. It just ends right there. That's what I should be. That's what Islam is. That's what I am. That's what I'm supposed to be. And then should and supposed to and should and supposed to, and I'm trying, but you never made it. You never make it. You never actually end up doing it. What's missing is the process. What's missing is actually the state of mind, the state of your existence. You have to be in a state that allows you to get there, and that state has to be this. That's the word. That's what jihad is. That's what it is. And you say, well, why is it always used in a form of combat? I'll explain it in a moment. It's not that hard. It's not rocket science. You'll see that, yes, a part of it is going to be standing your ground when you're being physically intimidated. Part of it is being that you're willing to give up everything for this, not just your time or your wealth or your leisure. And that's just really how this is supposed to be seen. Ambition, striving towards achieving your greatest goals to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Activism, striving with knowledge, wealth, stands, advocacy, the spoken word, written word. Being an activist requires you to, understanding activism and saying, no, I'm not going to be indifferent, requires you to be a mujahid. Someone who's willing to strive with all of these tools against all the difficulties and obstacles between them and actually being activists and making change in the world. And self-purification, striving against one's desires, is the most difficult thing you'll ever do. Everything else is much easier. By far, everything else is much easier. Like there's no comparison really. The most difficult thing you'll ever do is you'll strive against yourself. And if you lose, then every other battle after that is lost. And if you win, then every other battle after that is won. It's as simple as that. Okay? And that's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designed this. It's very simple. It's very intriguing. The fact that really all you have to beat is the one thing that you are in contact with all day long and control. And everything else is no big deal. Like, don't worry about the rest of the stuff. Well, you'll figure out that out later. Like that'll come along as you move forward with life. Really, what you have to strive against is the one thing that you control and the one thing that you're in contact with, which is yourself. You need to strive against yourself to make the right choices, to have the right concepts, to continue to work towards the right goals, and to remove the whims and desires and the evil that comes from within you. That is really your job, and that's what you're required to do. And that's where jihad is the most important. That's where jihad is actually practiced the most for the majority of your life. Majority of people, you're supposed to be in a state of jihad all of your life. A very small portion of Muslims historically have had to actually pick up a sword, even statistically speaking. Even statistically speaking, people who actually have to fight, if you take the number of Muslims who've lived and the number of people who actually have to fight, is a very, very small number. You're talking less than 0.5% of all Muslims ever had to actually stand in combat. Very few numbers had to do it. That means that jihad, 41 times in the Quran, like a 50,000 hadith talking about it, it's only for these 0.5%. No, it's for every living Muslim. In every moment, they have to be in a state of jihad. You just have to understand what that means. You're striving. What are you striving towards? What are you striving against? And that's what you have to define as you move along. Here's something to help you understand. It's called the umbrella concept, and I like this, and it's very helpful for all of you, inshallah. This is what jihad does for you. And the example here that I'll give you is the Prophet ﷺ's hadith in Muslim, and you'll understand it the moment I explain it to you what I mean. وَفِي بُضْعِ أَحَدِكُمْ صَدَقَةً. And having relations with your wife, there's sadaqah in it. Not an act of charity, but there's reward. That's what sadaqah means. Sadaqah is not an act of charity unless you're giving money. Otherwise, sadaqah is proof that you're truthful towards this to the deen, and you get reward for it. That's what sadaqah actually means. But if sadaqah means that there are in the relations that a man has with his wife, or a wife has with her husband, there's ajr. So the Sahaba started looking at each other. Just as some of you are grinning and smiling and looking at each other, what does that even mean? So because it didn't make sense at the moment. قالوا يا رسول الله أيأتي أحدنا شهوته ويكون له في أجر. Ya Rasulullah, we're going to go and suffice or fulfill this desire that we have and also get ajr for it. This is very selfish, Ya Rasulullah, from us when we do this. It's only for pleasure for us. Why are we getting ajr? So what he said, alayhi salatu wasalam, and this is like a big kind of moment. قال أرأيتم لو وضعها في حرام أكان عليه فيها وزر فكذلك إذا وضعها في الحلال كان له أجرا. He asked him a question. See, if someone went and did the same action but in haram, would they get punished or not? Would they get sin or not? Yes. Then if they put it in halal, then they get ajr. And this is where the umbrella concept comes in. Here's what it means. If you live your life for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just think about this for a moment. All activities that sustain and aid your well-being are for the sake of Allah too, even if they lack individual intentions. How many of you, every time they eat for the sake of Allah? Put your hand up. If every time you eat in your mind, I'm doing it for the sake of Allah. How many times, every time you drink water, you're drinking water and in your intention is for the sake of Allah? Yeah? Every time you walk out of the house, every time you say something to somebody, are you able to make an intention every single time you do every small individual action? Are you able? We were actually tried.
Just saying the giraffe count?
Yeah, it's a good way. And you can get a lot of stuff, but can you get every single one? All the time. We were actually put to that test as growing up with mashayikh. We were put to that test. Here, try and make every step that you make, every decision, every thought, to make it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can go through maybe 6-7 hours and then you're done. And then the whole thing will collapse. You can't do it. It's very difficult. It's very, very time consuming. It's very mentally consuming. It's hard to stay that focused because life is so quick. I got into my car and I'm driving. Is that for the sake of Allah? I forgot to think about it. But I'm going to pick up fulan. Yeah, did you think about it? No. Rahat Ali, it's worthless. All right, I bought an ice cream and I'm eating it. I didn't think about that. Could it be for the sake of Allah? Or this can't be for the sake of Allah? So that umbrella concept is saying everything can be for the sake of Allah. I'll tell you why. If your life is for the sake of Allah, then everything that allows you to live, by default, will be for what? Understand what I'm saying? Like if you're living for the sake of Allah, if your life, your whole life, and my life is dedicated to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then everything that allows me to live better, even my times of leisure, because without those times I'll lose my mind. Like if you need to unwind and watch a show and drink some tea or play, you need that to survive. Sometimes you need that time. If your life is for the sake of Allah, even your leisure, you get hasanat for it. And this is not something I'm making up. This is stuff scholars have talked about for years and years and years. As long as you're not doing something haram, obviously. You can't do something haram and then expect that. It doesn't work. I'm just so we're clear on that point. But otherwise, if you're not living for the sake of Allah, then yes, you're going to have to go and try and get every individual intention of every individual action, get an intention for it. But I'll make it easier for you. Be in a state of jihad, where you're striving towards the pleasure of Allah at every moment in your life. That's how you're living. You're striving towards making it. You're striving against every obstacle, every difficulty, against your whims, against your desires, against everything that's there. Striving, trying to make it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything that helps you do it, by default, you will get hasanat for. This is I love this concept. It makes life so much easier if you just understand it. Because instead of focusing on individual actions, you take a step back, say, why am I alive? And what is my life worth? And what am I going to do with it? What is my life going to be dedicated for? And then if you understand jihad, then is dedicated to striving for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you live like that, then khalas, everything. You eat, you drink, you spend time with your spouse, all of that you get hasanat for because your life is for His sake. But it's not, then that's a different story. If it's not for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then yes, you're going to have to, every once in a while, come up with a good intention for a good deed, try to take a few things here. But this just makes it easier. Because you're like, the only purpose I serve, the only thing I want to do with my life is serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I figured out what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep on doing that until the day I die in service of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm going to strive against everything until I get there. Then you don't have to worry anymore. Of course, it's really good and it's amazing if every time you sat down and you did something, you made the smallest little decision that you enter an individual intention. But even if you didn't, just going back to this hadith, even if you didn't, no one is going to have relations with their wives and are thinking about ajr. No one does that. Not even the salihin awliya. No one does that. But there is ajr in it because they're living their lives for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The reason that they're not making certain choices is because they're trying to serve Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what the state of jihad brings you. It allows you to live your life, to focus to have that bigger picture. It's an umbrella. The umbrella concept. You're living for the sake of Allah, all of the small D's just kind of lie under it. you close the umbrella, there's no more life goal, your life doesn't have a general theme of where it's going, then yes, now we have to go back and we have to figure out an intention for every single point. And most of our deeds don't have intentions, and most of your deeds you will never get ajr for. So you can make it easier by just taking on the state of jihad and living it, where you're always striving for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then everything works out. So here's some examples. سئل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أي الأعمال أفضل؟ قال إيمان بالله ورسوله ثم جهاد في سبيل الله ثم حج مبرور. When he was asked عليه الصلاة والسلام, what are the best deeds? He said, belief in Allah and His Prophet, which is the core. I mean, there's no point of even having these conversations if you don't believe in Allah and His Prophet, obviously. But that's the first step. Immediately after that, jihad fi sabilillah. Why? Because it's not an action, it's a state. Because you live like that all of your life. Another hadith, قلت يا رسول الله أي العمل أفضل? What is the best of deeds? He قال الإيمان بالله والجهاد في سبيل الله. You believe in Allah and then you strive for Him. You strive towards achieving all the goals you heard. You strive towards being a servant and a steward and an activist and learning, and all the concepts that you understood Islamically are important. You strive towards achieving them to the best of your ability. He says عليه الصلاة والسلام الساعي على الأرملة والمسكين كالمجاهد في سبيل الله والقائم الليل الصائم النهار. Someone who takes care of the armala or miskin, takes care of the widow or takes care of the needy, كالمجاهد في سبيل الله, is similar to, that's equal to jihad. Because that's what it is. This is where he explained عليه الصلاة والسلام. Because some of the Sahaba, by the way, came to the same conclusions that some people came to in our time. Why? Because they went through Badr and Uhud and Khandaq and then Mu'tah and then like battle after battle after battle after battle. After a while, the word jihad had only one meaning to them. It turned into one meaning, right? It became a unidimensional concept altogether. Why? Because they had their tests were with the sword. That's with the hand they were dealt. So they went through it so many times that became their issue. So the Prophet ﷺ would share all of these ahadith to explain. No. Go back to understanding it the way it was supposed to be understood initially. So they gave like this: someone who takes care of the widow and the needy is like a mujahid. They said, Ya Rasulullah, ما يعدل الجهاد? What is similar to jihad في سبيل الله? قالوا لا تستطيعونه. You can't do it. They asked him a few times, what's similar to jihad في سبيل الله? He said, مثل المجاهد في سبيل الله كمثل الصائم القائم القانت بآيات الله لا يفتر من صيام ولا صلاة حتى يرجع المجاهد في سبيل الله. So he gave the example. He said, if you're in a state of jihad, then it's like you are every moment, you are praying all the time and you are fasting every day and you are just doing dhikr the whole time. If you're in a state of jihad, if you're always striving for the sake of Allah, if you understood what this means, then it's as if you are spending every woken moment just praying and fasting and doing all the rituals that we take very seriously and very important to us, if you just are always in that state. Understanding the importance of this, it makes a big difference in how your life actually works. If you are always in that state of striving against difficulties, striving for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's as if you are spending every moment just praying and reading and fasting and all the stuff that you should be doing. So here's a nice example in Hadith al-Tabarani and Sahih. So مر على النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام رجل فرأى أصحاب النبي من جلده ونشاطه فقال يا رسول الله كان هذا في سبيل الله. So the hadith, the example, is that the Prophet عليه الصلاة was sitting and the Sahaba around him, and some gentleman walks by, and he's working really hard. He's pulling something, and there's a lot of wood on it. He's working, and they can see a lot of energy in him. Seems very, very powerful. So what they said when they saw this very strong, strapping young lad who was working, they said in front of the Prophet ﷺ, they said, لو كان في سبيل الله, only if this was like jihad fi sabilillah, how nice would it be if this person was an actual, right? So this is an example of them kind of just seeing it. If he's not fighting in battle, then that doesn't count. So this is what he said عليه الصلاة والسلام to correct this concept, so taking it back to its origin. قال إن كان خرج يسعى على ولده صغارا فهو سبيل الله. If he is right now doing this because he's going to make a living to feed his children, then this is في سبيل الله. وإن كان خرج يسعى على أبوين شيخين كبيرين فهو في سبيل الله. And if he's doing this, he's trying to make a living so that he can go and give some wealth to his old elderly parents to keep them supported, then it's في سبيل الله. وإن كان خرج يسعى على نفسه يعفها فهو في سبيل الله. And if he's doing it just so that he doesn't have to go and beg and ask people for money, and steal and take that what's not there, then it's also في سبيل الله. وإن كان خرج يسعى رياء ومفاخرة فهو في سبيل الشيطان. But if he's doing this just to show off his strength, then it's في سبيل الشيطان. But as long as he's doing this to take care of himself financially, take care of his family, take care of his parents, then it's في سبيل الله. Why do you think that it's only if he's carrying a sword and fighting the enemy that it's في سبيل الله? Are you understanding? This is what he's trying to explain, alayhi salatu wasalam. Is fi sabilillah anything, if this person, it goes back to the same umbrella concept. Are you living for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is your life goal, is your existence dedicated to strive for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Then everything you do that allows you to exist and allows you to thrive will be fi sabilillah. That is also in Imam Tirmidhi, he says, "Mujahidu man jahada nafsah." The true striver, the true mujahid is the one who strives against themselves. Man jahada nafsahu fi sabilillah. I'll share these two more hadith and then we'll go for a case, inshallah, and then maybe Brother Khalid can do a quick stretching thing for all of us. Hadith in Tirmidhi as well. The Prophet ﷺ, "Al-amilu ala as-sadaqa bil-haqqi kal-ghazi fi sabilillahi hatta yarja ila baytihi." The person who's taking care of distributing sadaqat to people who need it is similar, equivalent to someone who actually went on combat. Fi sabilillah. They're similar because they're both performing jihad. Each one is doing it within the context of what is required of them. And that's how we understand our countries, isn't it? Everyone has to be in the army? No, no one thinks that. But does that mean only the people in the army are true citizens and truly love the country? No, none of that is understood. Like, as a person living in any country, none of that is true. Why do we expect it to be true for Muslims? Why do we expect it? We're not. It never was. As a Muslim, some of us will be on the front lines, and some of us will be doing something different. And it's all jihad. It's all striving for the sake of Allah, if that's what you decide to make it. And that's how you want to understand it and live it. And then everything that you do will be for His sake, subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, alayhi salatu wasalam, "Man ja'a masjidi hadha lam ya'tihi illa li khayrin yata'allamuhu aw yu'allimuhu fahuwa bimanzilati al-mujahidin fi sabilillah. Wa man ja'a li ghayri dhalika fahuwa bimanzilati ar-rajuli yanzuru ila mata'i ghayrihi." He's saying, if you come to my masjid or any other masjid, he's saying about his own masjid, alayhi salatu wasalam, to learn khayr or teach it, then you are equivalent, you're equal to someone who's actually left their house for combat. And if you came here for some other reason, then you're wasting your time. Then you're staring at something that's not yours and you're harming yourself. I'll end with this one. Here's some concepts kind of to take away. This is half of the lecture. There's another half that I'll do next week, inshallah, for you, where we actually talk about the combat piece, that everyone has clarity on it, so they understand exactly where it came from, how it works, what are the examples, and what we're supposed to do with it. But I need you first to take some time to allow the word to sink in. This is not a word that we should put on the shelf and leave and say, well, it's better if you never use it, or try not to use it in front of. No. This is not a word that you're ashamed of. This is something that defines the state that you are in as a Muslim all the time. It's very important. It's very important on multiple levels. Jihad, striving, is one of the most important Islamic concepts. It describes a state that a Muslim should always be in. It ranges in difficulty and varies in form. There are different types of jihad and towards different difficulties and different struggles, and it's not all the same, and it has different forms, and it looks differently. Someone working in the ER is as much as a mujahid as someone who's in the middle of battle. They're the same thing if they have the same intention. Actually, you can easily say, and it has happened many, many times, someone in the midst of battle who's doing it for the wrong reason is not a mujahid. And someone in the ER who's actually taking care of people for the right reason is a mujahid. And how many people in the stories of the Prophet ﷺ actually fought with him, and then he said, this person is not going to Jannah. And the Sahaba were blown away. What do you mean he's not going to Jannah? Yeah, he came for the wrong reason. Didn't do it for the sake of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would send Jibreel to tell them, as a lesson for the people who were with them. Some other person working in a kindergarten taking care of kids, that is 100% jihad fi sabilillah. Anyone who's taking care of children is a mujahid fi sabilillah, at any level at all. Again, it all comes back to the state of mind and the general intention. Why are you alive? To strive for the sake of Allah, to do jihad fi sabilillah. Whatever you're doing is just banking hasanat. It's just filling up. You sit down for your lunch break, still the hasanat are running. It doesn't stop because you're eating. It doesn't stop because you're drinking. Nothing stops because you're living your life as a mujahid fi sabilillah. You're always trying to strive for the sake of Allah. It makes your life easier. You go to school. Do you understand that you spend a third of your younger years in school, 8 hours a day in school? Those 8 hours could all be hasanat if you just define that your life is going to be dedicated for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then every moment that you have to go there and study and learn and develop yourself and improve your own skill set and your knowledge, then you're getting hasanat, even if you're studying something that is not Islamic at all. But you're just learning, you're broadening your horizons, you're becoming more educated. That is helping you to do your job and serve your function. You're striving against these difficulties. You're writing a math exam. Or you're writing math homework. That's jihad if you have the right initial concept. It's impossible to sit down in front of a math formula or problem and try to make that individual action fi sabilillah. Try and do it. Try and sit in front of any piece of homework and try to say, I'm going to write this homework fi sabilillah. That's very hard. It takes like 15 minutes of processing before you can come up with the intention, and by the time you do, you forget about it. But if your life is for the sake of Allah, if you are always fi halal jihad, in a state of jihad for the sake of Allah, then just by default, automatically what you're doing is going to get hasanat. It makes every life activity an act of worship. That's the beauty of it. Imagine that that's been removed from our deen. Imagine that this piece has been removed from our vocabulary. This thing that is supposed to make everything you do an act of worship, we're going to take and get rid of that. Really? With no consequences upon how the ummah is going to function afterwards? Are you kidding me? Of course it's going to change how we see things. Of course we're going to feel life is much less meaningful because that piece has been removed, because they made us feel that word is a problem. It's not a problem. It's not a problem at all. It's actually something very beautiful. All right. I think, is the next one after that? Yeah, can you go to the end? Yeah, go to the end. Go to the end of the case. How about you take a minute, Abu Muhammad? Give you guys a moment to stretch, and then we'll run a case and do some mentees at the end, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We're actually not going to do a stretch. We're going to do a breathing exercise. One of my favorite. Yes, people love it. So I'd like you to change your stance to sit how you would sit in salah. Basically, as if you're going into ruku'ah, please. This is what we call the hero's pose. So sit on your ankles. And if it's available to you, maybe I can encourage you to close your eyes, if that feels okay. And as our beloved Sheikh told us, it really comes down to your intention for anything that you do. So what we're going to do right now is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's part of your ubudiyah. We're going to turn our lens inwards, and we're going to give ourselves a gift of a few minutes, where we go silent, and we just calm down and just breathe. It's sort of an invitation, a welcoming for us to accept this gift. And if you recall from the many times we've done this before, and for those who are new, we simply breathe in, hold, and breathe out. And we do this through our nose, deep into our belly, and we exhale again through our nose. And what we try to do is exhale slightly longer than our inhale. I like to do it for a count of 5 in, 2 hold, and 7 out. But you find your rhythm. So I'll count the first couple of times, and then you find your rhythm, inshallah. So inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold, 1, 2. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Do that again, please. And we talked about virtues before. So what I'm going to do is, as you breathe, I'm going to mention a few virtues. And maybe a little dua, or a little request of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you continue to breathe through your nose, deep into your belly, hold for a few seconds, and then exhale through your nose. And focus on the virtue of wisdom. And maybe say to yourself silently, may I be wise. O Allah, may I be courageous. O Allah, may I be loving like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ya Rab, may I be hopeful. Ya Allah, may I have gratitude to you. O Allah, may I have self-mastery. O Allah, may I be curious. Ya Rab, may I have zest. Ya Rab, may I be like your beloved Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And one more time. And when you're ready, smile and open your eyes. Jazakumullahu khair.
Does anyone want to stand up? If you're going to stand up, just stretch your legs out for a sec. Just 1 second. Stand up.
So we'll get up and we'll make into small groups. And that way you move a little bit around and we make some groups. Yalla.
Can we form groups of 8?
Form circles, please.
Groups of 8, please. If you can form a group of 8.
A circle of 8. Let's see a circle of 8. Make a circle of 8. Stand up for a moment, move around, and circle of 8.
This is a group. Do we have a group here or 2 groups?
How are you doing? How you been? Nice to see you in this.
Can we form a group, please?
You're
groups,
grown up
one
now,
group.
mashallah. Ahlan wa sahlan.
Groups of 8.
Mashallah. What are you doing?
Groups of 8, 8 to 10, something like
Great
that.
to see you. Please come and visit me more often here.
We're going to get started. We don't have too much time. Okay, you can take a seat now. Take a seat,
Now, you
please.
know where it is? Now I see you.
Once
inshallah.
you've formed your group,
Every week,
take a
inshallah.
seat.
This is your place, inshallah. It's open up for you guys. كيف حالك؟ كيف حالك؟ How are you doing? Nice to see you. Yeah, let's sit. Let's sit down. كيف حالك?
My name is Jihad. Jordan.
Yeah, like I said, so today was perfect for you to attend. Huh? You couldn't have. I couldn't have planned this if I wanted to myself. Yeah, this actually. Yalla, sit. كيف حالكم? Yeah. Make groups of 8, please. كيف حالكم? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have 2 people. I need 2 people over here.
Okay.
Go over there. You're not gonna.
Sheikh Adnan, do you want to explain them and then
Yeah,
we'll
let me
designate?
just explain before you start talking about them. So based on what you learned today, based on the stuff that we talked about, explain the following hadith. The hadith, this is a hadith that, we'll talk about its authenticity in a moment, but it's a hadith that's actually quoted quite a bit. So I think it's worth you taking a moment. Based on what you heard, how would you understand this hadith if it was ever used? ما ترك قوم الجهاد إلا عمهم الله بعذاب. No people will abandon jihad except Allah will punish them all. So how would you understand it based on what you heard today? That's the A. And then B, what is the relationship between jihad and the topics of activism, service, knowledge seeking, stewardship, istikhlaf? How does it fit? These 8 topics that I'm talking about they will all come together in one nice. Yeah, and it'll be like this symphony that just works. All of them just kind of work together, and they all bring a different aspect of how we live. So how does jihad kind of fit with the topics that we've already talked about? So take a moment to talk about it. Have you done A, B? Everyone knows? Okay.
But nobody knows yet. So this group, pay attention, please. A, B, right here. A, B. A, is this one group or two groups? One group here. A, B, A, B,
Time.
and you are A over here. A. Okay? We have about 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Designate a speaker, please. Designate a presenter. Okay, we should bring it together, inshallah. We're going to start with this group over here. So if we can just get your attention, please. Give everyone the same attention you'd expect of yourself. Okay.
All right, so assalamu alaikum.
All right, at the count of 3, 1, 2, 3.
Three. Quiet, please. Thank
Good,
you.
good.
All right, we had case A, and what we think the hadith means is that everyone should have the sense of jihad or the intention of jihad in their life. Jihad comes in different ways. Doesn't always have to be like fighting or battling. There could be jihad al-nafs, jihad al-mal, and there's multiple other ways. As long as jihad is part of your life in some way, then that's all what matters, because jihad has a big ajr, and I think the best form of jihad is jihad al-nafs. So if you have that in your life and you always strive for that, then you get a big reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from that. And that's why I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, the hadith says Allah will punish them if they abandon jihad, because jihad is a big ajr, and you as a Muslim are supposed to go after this ajr from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So yeah, that's what we think the hadith means.
Jazakallah. Very good. Over here, you're good. Yeah.
Okay, so what we understood is that the person that doesn't live their life for the sake of Allah will be punished.
Yeah.
And for example, like there's a lot of successful people in life that fall into depression and they commit suicide just because they don't do it for the sake of Allah. And there's an ayah that says, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا وَنَحْشُرُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَعْمَى. So that's
Very
right.
good. Jazakallah. Yeah, good.
Assalamu alaikum. So we had question B. So the relationship between jihad and all those topics is that those topics can exist individually, but like you said, in terms of the umbrella topic, jihad takes those acts but to the next level. So if I were to do activism, service, knowledge seeking, stewardship by itself, I'm making the intention single-handedly, that I'm going to do this, X, Y, Z. Rather, when you are in a state of jihad, all those things, you're living your life through the purpose of striving towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whether you're driving or whatever you're doing, you are always getting hasanat, and that relationship between those topics in jihad elevates the hasanat that you get.
Very good. Jazakallah.
So we also had, is this on? Is it working? Okay.
Yeah.
We also had case B, and we talked about that the state of jihad is something that lifts your soul in a way, and that you need to be in a state of
Anyway you like.
a state of jihad to achieve all of these like optimally. Like
Yeah.
if you're like an activist and you're in a state of jihad, it's like almost elevated compared to like without a state of jihad. And that these are all things that you should do for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and like making that your intention. Maybe not like entirely, but like if you're just in a state where everything that you do is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's going to be elevated again. And also that I added in that like all of these things are things that you strive for. Like you strive for activism, you strive for service, knowledge seeking, all that. Yeah.
Very good. So you're striving to actually achieve these things. So without the striving, you may just identify them and never actually do them because you're not striving. Yeah, good. Who's next? Yeah, good.
So our point was, we discussed point A, and we reached a conclusion that jihad is something. Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Jihad is something that you either use to elevate, or if you don't have it, everyone declines. So you're in a constant. There's nowhere. You're just stagnant.
Yeah.
So with jihad, you're either elevating or you're decreasing. And another way we thought about it is that the world has problems that are inevitable, and if you're not working on solutions to them and you're not striving for them, they will come, and they will come in forms of adhabs that you won't be able to deal with. And another aspect that we noticed is it talked about qawm and not just individual people. And we discussed that maybe there's a sense of societal jihad. So it's not just individuals pursuing jihad, it's jihad pursued as the community entirely together.
Very good. Jazakallah. Excellent. Who's you're good. You have to turn it on and then give it a second to
Okay.
click in.
We just kind of looked at it as like the literal translation of jihad is striving, and if you don't strive to please Allah with every action with every intention, then really there's no reward coming in, and with no reward, where are you going to end
All's
up?
left is-
Hell, yeah.
Very good. Simple and concise. Jazakallah. One more. Do you have one more group over there? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So we had question B here.
Yeah.
So our ideas were similar to what other people had mentioned, but we almost thought about it like a circle. You start actually with the idea of jihad. You start with the idea that you look into yourself, you look at the world, and you realize that something needs to change.
Yeah.
Something needs to be different. And I need to find out what it is. And then you enter onto that journey of jihad, coming closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and using that closeness to change yourself, change the world around you.
Yeah.
But you can't do that without any knowledge.
Yeah.
So you start by seeking knowledge. You start by going out there and seeing how you can do things differently.
Yeah.
And over time, that leads to creating the drive for activism, for service, for having that responsibility for your community, having that stewardship.
Yeah.
And once you've gone through that journey, then you have a more nuanced idea of jihad. What does it actually mean to strive for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And you're actually able to do it more effectively. So jihad is the starting point, but it's also the end as well.
Very good. No, very nice. Jazakumullah khair. Yeah, good. Just turn it on and then we'll give it a second.
Okay, so we had question B as well, and mashallah, everybody contributed to saying that jihad was kind of the center, like the spoke of it. So we thought we would give it a metaphor that all of these parts, so activism, service, knowledge seeking, stewardship, they're all kind of like parts of your Muslim car. And jihad and your ability to strive is the amount of horsepowers you have in your motor.
Very good.
So all of those things might be working in good working order, but without the ability to strive and to put some effort into it, you're not actually going anywhere in your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Now you stole my Jazakallah khair.
Oh, what did I steal?
I have nothing to add now at the end of this. All right, thank you. Jazakallah khair. Excellent. Jazakallah khair. No, I'm not upset. I'm just joking. Go ahead. Yeah.
Hi, so we had question A,
Yep.
and so there were 2 points we actually made about the hadith itself. The first point is that we actually punish ourselves by abandoning jihad because we like lose our sense of like driving force and our motivation, just in every aspect of life, work, going to the gym for some people, school, whatever it is. And then the second one is the punishment from Allah for punishing ourselves for losing our sense of jihad. And then my friend right over here is going to continue.
Yeah, go ahead.
And also another point is like even losing the actual word itself, like from our vocabulary as an ummah, like jihad, just like Allahu Akbar, for example, out of fear of what others think, it demonstrates like the potential downfall of us as an ummah, which obviously results in Allah punishing us.
Very good. So let's reclaim the word, right? Let's reclaim our word. This is our language, this is our Quran, and this is our word. No one can come and take a word from you and say this word is bad, and you can't use it anymore. No one has the right to do that. And this is your language, this is your book, this is the shara', and this is what we have. And we are not in any form going to have someone else come and take the word away because they chose to understand it, misunderstand it, misuse it, miscomprehend it, and then pin something evil towards it, and then pin it on you. No, that's not, you shouldn't, that's where you draw the line. That's where you say, no, this is not going to happen. This word is our word. This is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and we will reclaim that word. And that's the point of today's talk. And if it was something simple, I wouldn't have wasted time. There are some words that maybe exist peripherally, tertiarily in Islam that maybe have bad context but don't really matter that much. But this here, this is the fuel. Like you stole my analogy here. This is the fuel. Like the car won't go anywhere. You're not going to do anything. You're not going to be an activist. You're not going to be a servant. You're not going to be responsible. You're not going to seek knowledge. You will do nothing if you don't have the fuel. The fuel in the car is jihad, the concept, the state of mind of you always striving towards. If anyone tells you nothing has changed about me in the last 10 years, then 100% they have went 10 years backwards. There's no such thing as being stagnant in life. Either you're going forward or you're going backwards. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as being exactly where you are because time is moving and your expiry date is coming closer. So you're always going backwards. So there's no such thing as being stagnant. You have to move forward. So jihad, the concept of striving means that you can almost imagine it. Someone kind of pushing against the wind and snow and bad weather, but they're moving forward. They're not going to stop. They identify that no matter, as they walk, it's going to get harder. And the more, and maybe the difficulty will change. At some point it'll be wind and cold. Another point it'll be the scorching sun. Another point it'll be hunger. Whatever it is, you're going to be striving against something. But you have to keep on moving. That's the concept of jihad. It puts you in that state where you keep on moving. You're not going to stand around and wait for things to happen. You're not in a state of hoping that this will change, of going to sleep one day and then seeing a sheikh in a white ibaya and a white amama and come and touch you, and then you'll step in the morning and you'll be a wali and you'll be able to go and change the world because you have infinite knowledge because of this guy. No, that's not going to happen. It's not coming, it's not happening. You are going to strive towards achieving what you know is best for you. And that word in the Quran is key. It is the word. If you don't have I don't have an alternative for it. I can't say, okay, get rid of that word, I'll find something else. No. وَمَنْ جَاهَدَ فَإِنَّمَا يُجَاهِدُ لِنَفْسِهِ. You do it for yourself. وَجَاهِدُوا فِي اللَّهِ حَقَّ جِهَادِهِ. These are some of the most important, powerful verses in the Quran for us to shy away and not use them because we don't understand what the word is trying to tell us and what it actually means for us. It's very concerning for me. It tells me why the ummah is not functioning well because we're losing. A word has been taken away. No, we'll take that back. Thank you very much. That word is ours and we will learn to practice it appropriately. So that's مَا تَرَكَ قَوْمٌ الْجِهَادِ إِلَّا عَمَّهُمُ اللَّهُ بِعَذَابٍ. Any group of people doesn't want to do jihad, all the forms of it, striving against themselves, striving against sin, striving against all the difficulties that exist, whether there's poverty or it's ignorance, yes, they will be all punished. Doesn't mean that it's going to be an earthquake. No, they'll just be punished. On their own time, on His own terms, subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will happen to everybody. The moment we decide that we're no longer going to strive, we're no longer going to try. It's like a team in the middle of a game, just stop playing. The skill set is there. They want to win. They understand the importance of winning. All the concepts are there, but they don't want to try anymore. Right? You can't stand it. You can't stand watching that. It's very difficult. It's very annoying. I think we're out of time. And yes, it's the thread that kind of puts them all together. That's what jihad does. So your answers were all, I have nothing to really add. We do have a few, let's go to the menti. You take out your phone. That's okay. We'll take 2 minutes to kind of go through a few answers and questions. We'll continue. This is part 1. Part 2 will be next week, inshallah, on the same concept, where I'll explain to you a little bit where combat comes in and how to understand that so that you're not cornered and you're not losing. Take out your phone. You don't hear that very often from people like myself. Take out your phone and then go ahead and answer these questions. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we're gonna get the guest status set up, inshallah, so you guys can all log in and do it.
On the topic of phones, if you aren't part of the announcement group for this mentorship, there is a big announcement group that updates and also provides the previous lectures if you missed them. So they are updated weekly.
We'll make adhan and then we'll do it. So someone can make adhan in the meantime. Make adhan and fix it.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
So we'll be having some technical difficulties. So we'll start Menti, inshallah, at the beginning of of next week's sessions, inshallah. We'll pray Sunnah and Maghrib. And after Maghrib, we have the fiqh specific course orientation session. So after Maghrib, I'd ask people to pray Maghrib. And then if you're not a part of that orientation session, to please leave the hall for us to have that activity. And we'll be open for Isha, inshallah, afterwards. Jazakumullah khair.